you're asking an interesting question here, which is the question of how is jiu-jitsu useful outside of the wrestling ring? For an individual, the greatest gift that I think they get from jiu-jitsu is the idea of solving problems under stress. Every second of every match you're ever involved in jiu-jitsu is an attempt to solve the problem that my opponent is presenting to me. But it's a problem unlike any other. If I give you a simple mathematics problem, 742 divided by 13, it's a static problem. I give you pen and paper, you go through the various steps, and you come up to an answer. But in jiu-jitsu, the problems aren't static, they're dynamic. Worse than that, not only they're dynamic, I'm dealing with a cognizant, thinking opponent which is trying to defeat everything I'm trying to do to them. So with each second, the problem changes. As I try to give a solution to problem A, my opponent is already switching to problem B, and then C, D, through all the way through. Okay, so I have to be able to follow their problems. Not only am I asked to solve problems, but I have to solve them at a faster rate than my opponent is solving my problems. And in this sense, it's one of the trickiest problems you'll ever come across. That's why it has such an ability to hold people and addict people, because really the problems never get solved. Your opponent keeps getting smarter day by day, and those same 10 people you train with most of the time progress at roughly the same rate as you do, and so you never get to beat them. You never get to, your progress never goes so much faster than theirs that you dominate them. You're both progressing together. It's not until you go back and roll with someone who's a complete beginner that you realize, oh my God, I've made progress. I am getting better, despite what I feel day by day in the training room, where my opponents keep getting good at the same rate that I'm getting good. This ability to solve problems under stress is one of the most valuable things that I think that any human being can have. We live in a stressful world where usually most things are stacked against us. Just the simple act of getting to work some days can be tough. And your ability to maintain a calm, even mind and solve problems as they come flying at you with potentially bad consequences, that's a very, very useful attribute for any human being to have. Now that's as far as an individual goes. But let's ask a deeper question. How does jiu-jitsu benefit not just an individual, but groups of individuals on a social level? I would love, for example, to see jiu-jitsu taught in high schools throughout the United States as a required physical activity. Why? Because I think not just jiu-jitsu, but all of the martial arts, I'll say again, all of the sporting martial arts have a very, very valuable social function. When you think about it, it's kind of crazy to think that we advocate a sport which is so tied in with violence. Violence is usually seen as a very negative thing. No one says, no one proudly says, I condone violence. I mean, we look at a person like that was some kind of crazy one. And yet jiu-jitsu is undoubtedly linked to violence. Okay, it's the art of strangling people and breaking people's limbs. Okay, it's a violent activity. We look down upon violence in every other sphere, whether it be crime or warfare or what have you. Anyone who says I'm anti-violence, most people would agree with me. I'm involved in a violent sport, strangulation, joint breaking, but I'm generally a pacifist. Let's go back to that idea of our Darwinian world. We live in a world where there is a massive population and a limited set of resources. And so the idea of competitive violence is inextricably woven into human existence. You couldn't be a pacifist on this planet and expect to survive. Imagine an animal with completely pacifistic tendencies. It'd be wiped out in the first generation. Lions, tigers, hyenas would eat it. It'd be gone. The few pacifist societies that exist on Earth only exist because they were protected around the outside by more violent elements of that same society they were within. They couldn't have survived by themselves. And so a certain amount of violence is absolutely necessary to guarantee human existence. It's a competitive world. If you can't compete, you're not going to make it. But too much violence is itself destructive. Eternal warfare will wipe out a civilization just as surely as complete pacifism. And so humans have to strike a balance between their desire to avoid violence and their ability to engage in it. And the martial arts is the perfect example of finding a happy medium between the two. Yes, what we deal with is competition and violence, but it's put into an atmosphere where you can take away the negative elements of violence. There's no serious injuries, there's no death, there's no stealing of property. It's an honorable and safe form of violent activity. And so it raises a generation of people who are capable of defending themselves in a violent world, but will not promote violence. It sublimates the dangerous aspects of violence, criminal behavior, violent behavior, warfare, and makes them work within a peaceful social setting. And so good citizens can be great jiu-jitsu players. They could easily survive in a violent competitive atmosphere. They have the skills to do so, but they won't promote violence. That ability to find a happy medium between the need for strong competitive human beings and our desire to avoid unnecessary or harmful violence is the reason why I believe not just jiu-jitsu but all of the sporting martial arts are an essential part of everyone's education. The more I see the younger generation learning it, the happier I am. They learn that they can't be completely pacifist, but on the other hand, they can't be completely violent. They have to find that happy medium between them too. And jiu-jitsu, wrestling, sambo, all of the, even boxing, all of the various sporting martial arts teach that sense. They take a competitive, potentially violent setting and take out the negative aspects of violence and make it work within a social setting, in a social environment. And that's the social value of the study of the sporting martial arts.